Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Wednesday evening. How's it going, Heather?
It's going fantastic. I've been
That's
complaining
good.
all day about how cold it is, but it's been going fantastic today.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna give our viewers a tale of two extremes today with where our guests are located out of. But before we get going with that, as usual, this is How to CPCU. We are live every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are put on informally by volunteers from the CPCU Society, and we are here giving everyone insight into the value that is contained in the society, why you should get a CPCU, what it can do for you, and some of the other cool things that come with being involved in the society in a professional association like this. So, a reminder to everyone, as usual, whether you're watching live or the recorded version, please hit like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet, send out some smoke signals, whatever you need to do to get this out there to insurance professionals that could use this information. Okay, that's enough of that. Without further ado, we are joined by two representatives this evening of, I would say, would y'all say the rowdiest interest group that's out there, or what clarifier, what qualifier would you put on the 3IG?
Ooh, is that an open question?
Yeah. Well, I mean, remember, there could be children watching. I don't know why they would be, but there could be children watching. So,
Oh my God, it's a bedtime story. Maybe they're watching. I would say that we are the most international interest group. How about you, Shannon?
You're the chair, Abby. So, no, we are obviously the most international interest group since we are the international interest group. So, but I would say that the 3IG, as we're called, is by its very nature a hugely diverse group of people from a variety of backgrounds, and some of us have left our homeland to travel around the world, and I think it makes us perhaps a little bit more open to join each other on in past meetings. There's been a lot of unsanctioned dinners, shall we say.
I was going to say, Shannon, you're being extremely tactful in your answer.
I'm very careful. We have time yet. We have time.
So, that being said, this is a true testament to the fact that this is an international society. Shannon is joining us from beautiful Bermuda, right? Wait, what's the just so me and Heather, who are freezing our rear ends off, can be a little jealous. What's the temperature there at this point in time during the day?
Are you sure you want to know?
I'm a little bit of a masochist, so let me know.
It's like 60 something. I mean, often 70s during the day. We're considered subtropical.
That's not bad. That's not bad. And then we have Abby in Tampa, and Abby said that just because the Bucks won the Super Bowl, I think it's warm, right? Or is it just like a constant thing down there?
It's the weather has turned this week, so our sports teams are bringing it home for us. I think with everything. I'm more of a hockey fan, and the Bolts are doing really well again this year too. If you follow hockey, last year was obviously a great year. This year's pretty good too. So. I don't want to brag or anything, but I moved to Tampa last year, and then the Rays went really far in the baseball, and the Bolts won, and then obviously we know what happened on Sunday with the Bucks. So it's been pretty good.
So what you're saying is you're taking bids on people paying you to move to their city if they want their sports franchises to win. Is that what you're saying?
Good luck.
There we go.
So, befitting that you're a hockey fan, because I think Heather and myself probably have a skating rink outside of our offices right now, right, Heather?
Absolutely, we do. It is a solid sheet of ice. I'm actually in Oklahoma right now, and there's a layer of ice covering absolutely every surface outside. And I think our wind chills are going to dip into the negative 20s this weekend.
Wow.
Bundle up up, folks, if you're coming to the central part of the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just go visit Abby or Shannon.
I'll get on a plane like tomorrow. Okay.
All right. Come on over.
Precious wanted to remind everyone. First of all, before I play that comment, Precious wanted to remind Tony specifically that she beat him to being the super fan that was first in the comments, which is fantastic. And Tony's blaming his slow internet. I don't know. I don't know if I gather that. I don't or believe that. I have no idea. But and then we also got Mike Caselny joining in, lamenting. Or not lamenting, cherishing the championship. And then, so Precious said that y'all are the best party hosts in the society. And I would imagine a little bit of that has to do with the flair of the multicultural collection of people that you have in the interest group. What are some of the examples, like your regulars who show up to events and take part in the interest group? Where are they hail from?
Yeah, we have people from around the world, really. One thing I do want to say, too, about our events, we do host great events. And when we're lucky enough to be in person, please join us. And I think one of the reasons we're able to be so successful with that is that we have amazing sponsors who step up and really help us. So we have a lot of different companies that have been kind of with us along the way, Axco and Travelers and a few others. And the Bermuda chapter has helped us out, and a few other chapters around the country too. So that's really, kind of made a big difference for us. We have members that are really active from London and Paris, Switzerland, and now Thailand, for one of our members who just went from Zurich to Thailand. We have folks that usually will have somebody who maybe makes it from Japan or Korea or China, which is a little bit further for the travel. We have a member in Guam who I think maybe she often wins for like the longest plane rides to get to us. But
Wow.
She was our international ambassador a couple years ago. Her story is really cool. She is the first female CPCU on Guam. So that's really, really neat. She has an agency there and does some really neat work. So those are some folks I can think of. I don't know, Shannon, how about you? We have a great group, really.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's good representation in South America for sure. I will give a little plug to the Bermuda chapter. I believe we're still the largest chapter outside of the U.S. and going strong with holding steady at about 200 active members.
Wow.
Awesome. I got Tony chiming in saying, I think everyone knows Johnny. Johnny coming annually from Lebanon and Dubai several times.
Right?
I think there's a story there, right, Tony? I think Tony met Johnny like 5 times and didn't know who he was. I think that's the story. But no, that's awesome. You guys have like there is definitely a cross-cultural feeling to the 3IG, which I'm sure makes it absolutely fantastic. Have you had the pleasure of experiencing some of their meetings, Heather?
Oh, I've absolutely participated in some of those off-site 3IG, sometimes slightly sanctioned events that are attached to our annual meeting. And all I have to say is that they are an incredibly welcoming group of people who make the life of the whole CPCU annual meeting events they just bring it to life. They really do. And what I appreciate is you have an opportunity anytime that you step into those meetings to speak to people from all over the world who have such diverse cultural experiences. I've had some of the greatest conversations that I've ever had with people in the CPCU Society at those particular events. And it's just you walk away feeling very culturally rich. Let's just say you come away with a sense of that this is a group of people who are truly committed to the part of our industry that is not often highlighted. I know there's that sentiment around sometimes in the CPC. So, oh, it's a national organization. No, it's an international organization, and we
Right.
really push that speech now. And I find myself falling into that at times. But
Yeah.
after my experiences being with 3IG, that word national just kind of slips away, because we are an international society that is open to people from all over the world. And I love the enthusiasm that comes from that group for making sure that people recognize that. So.
I think it's worth covering that the International Interest Group, and this is very true of the Bermuda chapter, is quite a young group. And I think it really it excites me to see such a diverse, young, talented pipeline coming into the industry. And I know that there's, I mean, I'm American, I'm from the States, and I understand the, the insurance industry. Sometimes we fight a little bit of a stigma, in particular in the States. And it's kind of refreshing that that's not true elsewhere. It's certainly not true in Bermuda. It's definitely not true in London. And I think it's an interesting U.S. perspective.
I agree with you. And sitting here in the U.S., I think when I talk to other CPCUs, maybe new designees that are based here, they don't know the scope of what's happening internationally, either in insurance or with CPCU. And when I got my designation, I didn't either. I was at my conferment, was actually in New Orleans. So that's one of my favorite places. I was in New Orleans, and
I think I remember that.
and I read in the brochure that there was like international something, and then I happened to like hook up with you guys, and I mean the rest is history. But I didn't even know, getting my designation and going to my conferment, that the society was international. I just maybe assumed, but so since then, that's been something that I try to just tell people, is that hey, there is more than what's happening here in the U.S. And if you work internationally, if you want to work internationally, if you have an interest in international events, business, culture, this is a great group to be involved with, because you'll learn so much about how business is done everywhere. And it's kind of neat. When I first started, I was a claims supervisor for auto adjusters up in New York at the time, where it is also probably a skating rink right now. And I had really no idea of the scope of insurance everywhere. I'd heard of Lloyd's, of course, but beyond that, I didn't really know kind of what was happening. So to get exposed to it, it really kind of changed the scope of my career and my world. So I find myself kind of telling people that, hey, there is so much out there to learn, and it's just really, really cool. I know I'm kind of an insurance nerd, but this stuff is really exciting when you start looking into some of this, or thinking about it, or wondering, oh, how was that insured? Or the Olympics gets a lot of press for keep moving the date or canceling it, or whatever. Everything with COVID, it's just, our field is so interesting right now. So I try to relate that to people when I meet new CPCUs.
Yeah. Now, with COVID being a truly international pandemic and issue, would you say the 3IG was doing a good job, or at least kind of primed in terms of being decentralized in your communication, like not necessarily always having to rely on folks to congregate in one central location?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something we've gotten good at just out of necessity over the years, because we have people everywhere. So us getting together is a bit of a luxury to meet in person. So, we've always had good luck with our conference calls, and sometimes we Zoom, sometimes we don't use video, but it's I think we took that one in stride. But it's always interesting when you have people located everywhere.
Yeah. How is it managing time zones, Shannon?
I can't complain in Bermuda, because we, we call London in the morning and we call the West Coast at night, and that's what you do.
That's an interesting point. So like, you're like being in the middle, you're kind of, you get the best of both worlds almost, or at the very least, like, you can catch a large portion of the world's day during your normal waking hours, right? I think
Yes.
now you do have to manage, like Abby, you were saying, there are some folks that are coming from kind of outside that like 12 to 14 hour window, right? So that can get a little I mean, do you have to schedule around that, or is that something that, just kind of, if they have to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to get on a call, they wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning?
For CPCU, we've done events at 9 o'clock at night when we've had Chinese speakers. So we'll do it at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So then it ends up being in their morning. But the more of the events are probably on a US centric time scale. When we do webinars and we have a European speaker, we will move the webinar to the morning. So it'll be more like an 11 a.m. Eastern, so that it's not too late at night for that speaker. And the same with our meetings. We've played around with the timing of our committee meetings just to see what seems to work best for folks. And it generally is that 11 a.m. Eastern slot so that we can get the west coast of the US and then kind of on the way, at least, to most of Europe can still join. So it's challenging.
Yeah.
Shannon, you said something that just kind of struck me because it's been a little bit of a CPCU afternoon for me. We hosted the interest groups roadshow today, earlier before this call, and we actually had students on there that are Gamma Iota Sigma members and volunteers and everything, and they, like, I walked away with so much passion and fire from that, and like awe-inspired by what they're going to give back and contribute to our industry. And I think there are so many opportunities for them to have their eyes opened about the international aspects of insurance, because what we did here, and I heard loud and clear, is a lot of times what they learn in college is very textbooky, and they learn about the traditional roles in insurance and the traditional lines, and I, not that international insurance isn't truly traditional to those who function in that world, but to those of us here in the US, it may be an unknown factor. So I would love to see opportunities that you guys take advantage of to engage those groups, and I'm sure that you guys already do that. But just an incredible group of students and so much wisdom. My goodness, I want to call some of them up and get mentored. They truly are the future. They're going to change our industry, and it would be incredible. It would be awesome for us to coordinate some type of webinar with them around the topic of international insurance, because they have a lot to contribute to that.
I totally agree. And we in Bermuda, actually, pre-COVID, we would host several risk management schools here. Many of them come here for spring break, and they go around the market because we do have a lot going on in one little square mile, and they visit with brokers and insurers and reinsurers and the Bermuda Monetary Authority, and have a really interesting educational experience. And many of them, most of them are juniors and seniors already, and so they either have an internship lined up, or a lot of the seniors have jobs already. And what we do is we try to coordinate. The last day they'll do a day intern. So if somebody's going to work for a major broker in the States, then we make sure they spend time at that office here that last day. And then, hopefully those people can take them out to lunch, and they can answer, all their questions. And I do find some of the best questions come from students, or those in the first year in the industry, because although the last year, I think, has interestingly propelled our industry much further than we would have otherwise, as far as working from home and flexible work, and everybody's got unlimited vacation. You just got to get your job done, kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure we would have been here. I think it would have taken us 10 years, right? So I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful that I think it's really going to help us keep a lot more of the young talent pipeline.
Yeah, no, that that's all very true. I think the holding our collective feet to the fire was a positive. I think the other thing that came out of this that even internationally, not just domestically, but any of the countries that experienced, financial hardship and things like that, the insurance industry was extremely resilient during this. And
Absolutely.
so I think that is a huge marketing piece for any, young up and coming, whether it be college students or folks looking to change industries or professions. That's a huge recruiting piece. Just to kind of catch up on comments a little bit, Tony said that's absolutely correct. Johnny, he introduced himself to Johnny 4 years in a row the same way, and then finally in New Orleans, Johnny tailed him around the entire meeting, so he will never forget him again, which is good. And then, so Mike K wanted to point out, so there are a number of 3IG members that sit on both the Leadership Council and I believe there's a member of the Ethics Committee from 3IG. So that also kind of like points to the fact that, the international piece of this society is ingrained in the leadership structure as well. What do your what's the substance of like a lot of kind of your sessions focus on? Is it mostly emerging risk type stuff? I mean, are you talking about, what the standard GL form looks like in a different country? Like, what are you typically presenting in terms of the meat and potatoes of the educational piece that you bring to the table?
Yes, all of it, all of those. Sometimes it's a deep dive into, we've done webinars on deep dives into the way a country handles their insurance and risk management, focusing on maybe a certain region of the world. But we've also looked at particular type of coverage or, a particular, maybe an interesting event that's happening and how the coverage is working with that. Another thing that I think is pretty cool is we look at maybe a comparison. We'll partner with maybe risk management interest group or claims, and we'll do a webinar and compare the way a situation is handled internationally and then domestically in the U.S. So you can kind of, maybe if you're a claims person in the U.S., you can understand maybe how you would handle it or we would traditionally handle it here, and then kind of compare it to the way things are looked at outside the U.S. We've done, I think it's still actually on the Institute's website somewhere. There was a course on international insurance that a couple folks from 3IG had put together a couple of years ago. And it's pretty quick, but it was very comprehensive as far as like an introductory program as well. So there is some good data like that out there. And we do maintain our website, although that's shifting over to Interact this year. But we have a newsletter that we've been publishing for a couple of years, somewhat informally. And that offers some profiles of folks and maybe updates of what's happening around the world. So that's kind of fun too. So I would say we try to do things around a lot of different educational opportunities and some fun stuff combined.
What'd you miss, Shannon? If anything.
No, I'm just thinking of, I think we try to offer a broad spectrum. I remember a few years ago, myself and a outside legal counsel partner did a pretty technical review of the Bermuda market casualty form, which is an interesting part of insurance history. Because the casualty crisis of 1986 really led to excess casualty being kind of born here in Bermuda between originally XL and ACE, and they came out with a brand new form that's a hybrid of occurrence and claims made, and that form is still very much in heavy use today. And it is it's a lovely 42-page form. If everybody anyone would like has any questions, call me. Or I'll send you a copy and then you can read it and then you can call me.
I'm truly an insurance nerd, Shannon, because I would love it if you would send that to me. I've written homeowners policies, so I'm definitely a contract nerd.
I am too. But then again, we sort of balance that out. Like locally, we'll do something like that, very, very technical. And then the next week we might do, I don't know, tequila tasting or something like that, and just purely social. So I think that you have to do something for everyone.
Awesome. Terrence saying 3IG is a great interest group. Shout out to Abby and company. Terrence.
Oh, hang on. Sorry.
The attack dog. We stirred the attack dog.
Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back.
So Terrence giving a shout out from cold New Jersey. Mike K said, "Ask Shannon about Swizzle. What's Swizzle?"
Yeah. Yes. Well, there are two main adult beverages of Bermuda. Swizzle is one of them. You might be more familiar with something called the Dark and Stormy, which is Gosling's Black Seal rum and ginger beer. And ginger beer is actually non-alcoholic. It's like ginger ale but stronger. So Swizzle is actually more of a fruity beverage. I call it. It's a little bit closer to like a Planters Punch, but not as sweet. And it also uses the Gosling's Black Seal rum. And I do have a pretty good recipe for that.
Yeah.
So what I do is I'll send you the 42-page form.
Yeah.
And then I'll send you the recipe for Swizzle. This will keep you even
Just underneath.
Skills and your social skills. Yeah. Got to be balanced.
There we go.
Have you tried Shannon's Swizzle there, Abby, or what?
I think
You did. You just don't remember.
She has to be reminded of it, huh?
That good.
When I was in Bermuda, it was not only a business trip, it was also in celebration of my 40th birthday. So who can blame me? Come on.
Yeah.
It was a balanced trip.
Exactly.
There we go.
Yeah.
Apparently, Mike K has indulged a little.
He knows. Yeah.
And Precious is appreciative of the hardcore insurance nerd stuff being discussed along with the extracurriculars. So really quickly before we move on, and this is something that 3IG can definitely take advantage of if you guys so wish. So a kind of pet project as an interim piece. I know they're going to be putting together a more official version of this on Interact. But we, as a New Jersey chapter, we are putting together a shared CPCU chapter calendar of events. And so all of the CPCU chapters out there that host events that are open to other CPCUs from outside of their chapters, mostly because of Zoom and virtual and everything like that now, they can feel free to post on Interact on the threads that are on there, or we'll even manually parse those things that get put on Interact. So if 3IG has any stuff coming up, we would be more than happy to put that on here. I will actually share the link if it works in the comments. If anyone does want to access that, it is a shared Google Calendar, and we've learned through trial and error not to share Zoom links actually on a public calendar, because that's how you end up getting hacked. So we will share, if there's no official registration site, we'll share the email that has to be tapped in order to get an official link via email and keep that all safe and secure. So
that's really cool, Matt. Thanks.
Yes. So Interact. So anyone who's not on Interact, both you guys are on Interact right now, I would assume.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anyone who's not on Interact, who's watching this, definitely get on there. It's basically the CPCU message board. But I think as part of the rollout of the individual chapters, they're going to be putting a shared calendar out there. Let's see.
They're working on the interest group sites. You guys had a bad one? Tell me, I don't know about this.
Tony hosted that kind of open Zoom room during Inter-Risk, and for a moment he had it out on Twitter, I believe, so folks could find it there. Let's just say an interesting individual showed up, and we quickly exited the room. I'm so glad it was just me and Tony in there. Let's just say I'm glad some new designees didn't drop in.
Oh no.
So So that's something that we're actually, as a group 3IG, we're trying to like figure out what to do this year for like webinars and stuff. If anybody has ideas, like what do you guys want to see? You know, like when Shannon, you were talking about that, I remember that one, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe we should do another, you know, deep dive or you know, an update to that or something.
Well, Heather will be there.
I mean, yeah, Heather can take that one. You know, like what do we want to do this year? You know, do you guys have any thoughts of what people want to see? Like,
Yeah. Well, more to come on that. I think that there's probably going to be some soliciting interest and some partnering that we can do as IGs with various other groups and cross collaboration in between interest groups as well. I think it's fantastic because your interest group has their, I guess, tentacles, you could say, into every other interest group that we have in the society. You do that from the international perspective, and that's what I truly appreciate about 3IG is that you're involved in risk management, you're involved in professional development groups and leadership, you're involved in claims, you're involved in underwriting, you're involved in the worlds that all the rest of us who are part of, you know, different IGs, agents and brokers as well. We'll list them all out now, but you have that. You bring a level of understanding that a lot of people don't get, you know, from the limited world that they may live in the States. And you do that across the industry, which is truly exciting about your IG. And I think that it would be super cool if there was some type of webinar that we could do that does do those comparisons of what's underwriting like in the international world versus what's it like in the States? What's writing a policy like in the international world versus what it's like in the States? And I mean, we could go on as to how that would all work out. But those would be my ideas and my votes. But I think we got to get the interest of what the members want, really, to know what those end users need to hear from us. So
I have one suggestion that's a little bit more geared towards the students. We did a really interesting one at the request of a specific school from Gamma Iota Sigma, but from more of the actuarial group is, you know, how do underwriters and actuaries interact in the real world? And so I invited my actuary and his junior and me coming from the underwriter side and my junior, and we had a really fun banter with the students about, you know, who makes the end decision.
Yeah.
And it really depends on your line of business, right? Like how much is your line of business judgment driven versus actuarial driven? And it was a very interesting kind of real world conversation.
I think what's also interesting about like inclusive of that is also the I'll call it the ramming together of InsurTech and what we've kind of like artificially drawn as regulatory lines, right? So like in the States, we have every single state has its own Department of Banking and Insurance, right? And rate filing mechanisms and regulatory and everything like that. Same thing internationally, right? Like you have different countries have different standards, maybe even within the countries are different standards. And then you have other standards that come into play whenever you're writing business that crosses international lines. I'm wondering where that's going because it's extremely like inefficient and a ton of insurtechs are basically forcibly blurring those lines, right? Like just E&S business in general in terms of how it's written is being blurred. So I think that's also something. Has that been something that kind of you'll have talked about or contemplated in terms of just the the rat's nest of regulations that, you know, exist within the international insurance space?
I've avoided all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, the topic of federal versus state regulation of insurance in the States is one that's been talked about for how long? And,
yeah,
you know, you're right. It doesn't make sense. And it can be even more difficult internationally. And now, we focus on larger insureds, and it's kind of like we just have freedom of rate and form because that's what our clients want and that's what they
Right.
need. And we're not fronting policies or doing, in-country policies or anything like that. But I know that it's huge business. I will say from an international perspective, we've seen there's always been the European insurance premium tax, right? And some countries have paid absolutely no attention to it, but now they're all trying to crack down because they just see it as an income stream.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes us have to go back to our insureds who are global. And I'm like, I'm giving you one policy. I'm not taking care of your global tax. You have to go do that. That's not included. And most of them are okay with it, let's say. But nobody wants to get fined. Like, we don't want to get fined. They don't want to get fined. You've got to figure out at what level do you need those local policies, and at what level, if somebody wants to buy a large tower of insurance, they're going to buy it.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point, because it's like if you are doing business across state or across international state lines, 9 times out of 10 you're a larger employer or business or something like that. But there is a growing contingent of just like, drop ship type companies, and supply chains have become extremely globalized. So I think that also kind of comes into play in terms of just, the regulatory environment, in terms of, what the liability threshold is in one country versus another, while, whatever, transporting raw material or something like that, right? All crazy machinations of things that can be thrown into the blender and figured out on the fly. Probably helps to have one or two swizzles before you have that conversation.
At least one.
Yeah.
Right. That was going to be my next question. So in the States, it used to be a 3 martini lunch. In Bermuda, is it like a 2 or 3 swizzle lunch? Is that the way it goes, or what?
No, I mean, I think now, people think you live on an island and it's all island time. But
Yeah.
what people have to understand is that, we service global clients. And so I'm not competing with just Bermuda underwriters. I'm competing with New York underwriters, London underwriters, Zurich underwriters. Like, it's whoever gets there.
Yeah.
Some of it is speed to market.
Yeah.
So if you're out having your 3 swizzle lunch, it's you might miss a deal. So I mean, having said that, I do kind of feel like I'd be interested to get your views on this. I feel like working from home, you kind of work 10 or 12 hours Monday through Thursday, and by Friday afternoon, I do think people kick off a little bit earlier than they would otherwise. But I don't feel like the employers are missing out on the hours. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Like, no official answer.
No comment, I guess,
No
is
comment.
the official answer. I think it's...
Who's counting?
The flexibility to be able to choose when and how to work is so incredibly important to people today. And I would think it would be even more important in the international space, because you do deal with global clients.
There's
and
no
you have
time
to be
zone. Yeah.
you have to be available at all hours. And so I think that employers recognizing that and really celebrating it, and kind of lifting that to the forefront, that's what's going to bring this next generation on board and keep them in our industry, because they so value that flexible culture. Learned that today for sure, that they definitely value a flexible culture, and one that values their time, but and recognizes that the normal 9 to 5 is not the day anymore.
I think you have to pair that flexibility with results. And I think that if the whole, I think as long as you are results oriented, and you should be anyway, regardless of if you're sitting in the office or sitting at home.
Right.
So I do think it's refreshing for our industry that there's still some old guard that are about FaceTime, and they really need to be about results.
Yeah.
Before I stick my foot in my mouth, what are your thoughts, Abby? You're a consultant and in the coaching world and things like that. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think it's I mean, my feelings have changed a little bit since I was working in a corporate 9 to 5 type situation, and I find myself sort of working when it makes sense to me. And I'm a morning person, so I'm up early and I work and I can go, until lunchtime, and then I've got to kind of take a break from things that are stressing my brain, and go outside and enjoy a walk on the beach or something, like take the dog out. And then, kind of come back in and do more. But I can't do like the spreadsheets or thinking type work in the middle of the afternoon. It's just not like how my brain works, and I think that people want to have that flexibility and kind of be able to value the time that makes sense to them and do the work that, they find meaningful at the right times for them. It's not, you can't just cram it all into that 9 to 5 box anymore. I don't think that traditional employment. Yeah, I do go to seriously, I take my laptop to the beach. It's ridiculous. It's a completely different way to live. I'm very happy, very happy.
And then you take gorgeous photos to share.
It's becoming a hobby.
Yeah. And then for some people, it's a early Saturday morning or early Sunday morning when their kids are still asleep. Like I do that because 3:00, the house explodes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think what's also happened with the present environment is all of the schedules that happen around your work schedule also kind of simultaneously exploded, right? So like it was like the 9 to 5 thing used to work well when the kids were in school 9 to 5, right? Like the 9 to 5 thing worked when all of the kids' extracurriculars happened after hours. It's not the case anymore, right? Like, I mean, my kids for the most part are homeschooled the majority of the time regardless, but they have classes at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning because they're taking it from an international teacher, right? They have them at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. So those things, like to your point, like it requires a more agile just viewpoint in terms of the way the day works. And you know what? FaceTime is important, but it doesn't have to be necessarily, FaceTime, at the same 45 minutes every single day of the week. Like, there needs to be some flexibility built into the schedule. I mean, mine is a very retail customer centric position. And so I have to be available when they are. And what I found is, and what's really tough to manage is it used to be that the majority of them were 9 to 5. So most of the headaches for me happen 9 to 5. Now they happen at 2 o'clock in the morning when I get a text message and the person's like, well, it just so happened to be up and this was at the top of my mind. So I decided to send it to you. And I had to put my swizzle down and actually kind of have a cup of coffee and answer a question intelligently. But no, like that's kind of the dynamic. I mean, it's also like, it's a testament to 3IG being ahead of the game culturally because I can remember when I worked like in an investment as like a trader for like an investment bank that the world markets were becoming 24/7, 365. And we're talking, 15, 16 years ago. So that dynamic has passed through to most other walks of life. It's really rare that you still find someone who's like, oh yeah, I punch my card at 9 o'clock and then I punch my card at 5 and that's my day. I mean, it's become I now think it's become the outlier, But that's just kind of my take. I think. Wait, why do you think we were so slow to react? Do you think it was just things were good and we didn't want to mess with it?
It's just a very conservative type industry.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Are there some countries?
We're not culture breakers, I guess you could say. We're not paradigm shifters. First of all, because we are a conservative industry and we tend to be heavily risk averse, and you consider it's typically considered to be a risk to alter the norm of how you operate. But we're not living in a world that operates that way anymore at all. And I think to our testament and to our credit, we as an industry have responded very well to what has happened and how there's been that shift, that very quick shift to we've got to operate in holistically different ways than we ever have in the past. But it is it is one of those things that takes time. We tend to be a slow ship that turns pretty slowly, So,
It takes time to turn a huge ship.
yeah.
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 Are there some countries that are less risk averse, I would say, or more adventurous in their treatment of insurance and risk management that you all have been kind of exposed to?
I'm not sure I agree with just going back to the first part of like, I don't know. I take risks for a living, so I don't consider myself particularly risk averse. But
Yeah.
but having said that, when I go to Las Vegas, I don't feel like I need to gamble because I do that every day,
Yeah.
and it's not really, you know. As far as risk averse, I don't know. I think that London is very risk front forward. I think they're very quite creative, if you will.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And obviously, I think Lloyd supports that. I think Bermuda is more traditional. I think Bermuda is more conservative. We're here to do what we do. We're supposed to be the most stable market, sitting in between this and that. It doesn't make us the cheapest market, which is up for debate. But our pricing is supposed to be rolling hills instead of boom, boom, boom. But which is kind of interesting. But at the end of the day, our business is taking risk for a living.
Yeah,
I agree with you. And I think there are some, and I think it maybe changes over time, but sometimes some countries in Europe seem a little bit more risk averse, maybe, but I agree with you on London. I think Australia is pretty open as well to risk. I think it's changing over time, though, along with other things you guys were mentioning InsurTech before, as we start to see, a better way to be able to manage and view and finance and identify risk, that might continue to change too.
Yeah, InsurTech helps that speed to market piece a lot of
Yeah.
times that
Yeah.
it can take companies, large traditional companies, years and years and years and years and years
Yeah.
a product that they might want to try and release, but yet an InsurTech can do it in 90 days or 60 days sometimes, because they have the mechanism to be able to, and the innovation to be able to build it faster for speed to market. That's where I think the blending of the world has to happen, and I'm a huge advocate of traditional carriers partnering up with InsurTechs
Right.
to accelerate their capabilities in those spaces, because they typically don't have that knowledge in house. They don't have that capability in house, and they're operating on old systems that don't allow them to do that. So it's quite interesting. I had the opportunity to travel to South Africa a few years ago, and there was an advertisement on the TV all the time about this life insurance company that was started in South Africa, because there was a huge gap in the life insurance market in Africa in general. And you want to talk about innovation. I mean, they developed life insurance you can buy from an app, and you're approved and underwritten in less than 24 hours. It's incredible, the innovation, because of they saw a need, they filled it. And it's an incredibly successful life insurance company there now, and they're doing business in places outside of Africa even now. So those kinds of stories give you hope that all of us who live in the States can learn from those lessons and grow from them. And those are the types of lessons I think that all of us that work here in the industry need to learn, because that's how we're going to innovate. That's how we're going to grow.
Yeah, there's so many InsurTechs starting up outside the U.S. and then coming to U.S. carriers, right, and bringing some of that innovation or maybe some of those ideas or those products that work outside of US regulatory environments, and then can come to a carrier here and find a way to make it work within the environment, right? And those kind of things are exciting to me. I think that's a real energizing boost to our industry domestically as well.
Yeah. Have you all heard of outside of the U.S., the first thing that comes to mind is like Israel in terms of like insurtech, like I guess like a locus of insurtech kind of like startups and like innovation and stuff. Are there other areas internationally that are also kind of either flying under the radar or maybe I just haven't heard about and they're kind of like these center points of insurtech innovation that's going on?
There's some cool stuff in Singapore you might want to look at, Matt.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you on Israel being, a good hub, but I think there's some companies in maybe based in Belgium and the Netherlands that are doing some interesting things. And I think, too, we're going to start to see more South American companies coming up in InsurTech, too. That's something that has been an interest of mine recently.
Yeah, that's interesting because the again, like that ability to be able to do business like pretty much anywhere in the world, right? It also means that with I guess less, how should I put it? You don't need as many resources in order to start an insurtech, right? Like you need a programmer and maybe some like server space and things like that, especially if it's like an app-based technology or something. But yeah, like I've seen fits and starts from all over. I've seen one from Spain that was it was like a personal financial planning one. And so like to your point, Heather, if you answered something like, it was like a game of 20 questions. Like if you answered 20 questions about yourself, it would spit out quotes. Now, I don't think they had like a ton of carriers behind them, but it was just a speed to market or a speed to value kind of thing where you answer 20 questions. And I think it spit out a life insurance quote, an AD&D quote, a disability quote, and then something else. Like there was like 4 or 5 things and they were like, all right, well, here are like the 3 stools of your personal financial planning, the 3 legs of your personal financial planning stool. This is like, 1 and 2, right? Like it was pretty incredible. But again, like to your point, Abby, like it's interesting. So they get to make it somewhere else where maybe it's a different regulatory environment or maybe even a less stringent one. And then the question is, can they adapt it and move it in? Has that affected the way that you do business, Shannon? Like, are there any insure-techy type solutions that y'all are including in your day-to-day? Or is that something that's, maybe not necessarily integrated into your part of the supply chain?
As a data resource, yes. Mm-hmm. We have partnerships with a couple of companies that provide us with, I'll call it a forward-looking underwriting emerging risk view. One specific more to the chemical industry, and we have another partner for the life science industry. So they're able to take information that's publicly available, but put it into a format, an actionable format for an underwriter to actually make a decision. So it's not for us because we are low volume but high in complexity. We need underwriter decisions that are supported by better data sources to put things into context for us and help us to prioritize issues. Whereas I think the insurtech things you were talking about before, that those are lines of business that heavily rely on, those are the ones that are the high frequency, low severity, where the actuaries can spit out some reasonable rates with confidence.
Right.
Right. Which is not the case in my area.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like the effect is, I think the one that's most, it's kind of like the scenario where like you ask a kid who's going into college, what is insurance, right? And they're like, oh, Geico, State Farm, Travelers, like whoever they see on TV and stuff like that. And that's probably like if you ask a millennial or something about InsurTech, they'll probably name an app or an ease of use thing like you're talking about. But it also gives that data analytics aspect of the business a boom too, right? Where you're making more informed decisions on the back end. That's
absolutely
that doesn't get nearly as much of the press. I guess it's not as sexy of a sell.
It's a little below the parapet, but I think it's pretty interesting. We have another partner in London that helps us identify, in an increasingly interconnected world, what areas of clash do we have on our book that may not be apparent?
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But there's little niches of partnerships, but there's no one stop serves all.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I want to be cognizant of y'all's time. I want to say thank you very much for taking an hour out of what I'm sure is a very busy day for both of you. Heather, did you have any final questions, comments, recommendations for the next social function for 3IG that you wanted to throw in there?
All I gotta say is we got to start planning Orlando already.
Right.
Yeah, and
right
crossing
across
those fingers that we're there.
Hope to be there.
I think we're gonna have to throw a couple after parties at Abby's house while we're in Orlando. It's about an hour and a half away, right, from Tampa. Yeah.
It's not bad.
maybe after Inter-Risk is over, we'll reconvene at Abby's place.
Yeah.
So I want to thank both of you for taking the time out. This has been absolutely fantastic. If anyone wants any additional information on the International Insurance Interest Group, go to international.ig.cpcusociety.org. That's international.ig.cpcusociety.org. And we, as usual, we will be back next Wednesday at 5:30. We're also working on some profiles. So to speak of the diversity and kind of the cool stuff that people do in the 3IG, we're going to be profiling CPCUs that have interesting jobs throughout the insurance ecospace and as well as, just in general and, underwriting cool risks and, doing crazy things on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to be profiling some of those folks going forward. So again, thank you all very much. If you get a chance, remember, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, retweet, send it out there. And if you do watch the recorded version, share your comments and questions. We'll make sure to answer them as they come up. So we appreciate you very much. Heather, got another one in the books. I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Hopefully it's a little warmer next time, Heather.
Oh, I hope so.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
night.
Thanks, everybody.